Welcome to our Vinyl Happy Hour, episode 17. I have several things to add on to the show tonight, but first off, I just want to mention coming up for Culture Shock and the Rockford area is the Rockford Record Crawl coming up October 20th, 2018. It's the 5th year for doing this. We have 5 stores involved with it. 96.7, I want a big shout out to the Eagle also for helping us sponsor the event and all the other stores involved with it. There's going to be some great winnings for people who attend the record crawl. And at Culture Shock, we are really busy sorting through lots of records to put out for a huge sale we're doing. So that's going to be a lot of fun. As I say every week, I think, with the Vinyl Happy Hour, picking my 5 records tonight to review while I'm having a drink was a tough one because there's so many older classic artists that I really want to show off, but there's so many great new releases. I got a new drink also. This is such a fancy looking bottle. This is 1792. It's a small batch Kentucky bourbon, straight bourbon, and kindly offered to us as complimentary from the company. Really enjoying it. It's such a fancy bottle though. It's like I didn't even want to open it. I was like, this looks like a really fancy cologne bottle or something like that. But it's a great bourbon too. Very smooth. Just drinking it neat. It's smooth enough. There is a little bit of peppery feel. Not a very dark caramel flavor. Just a little woody, a little oaky too. I believe it's aged 8 years though. So that gives a nice wood flavor too from the barrel. This is a small batch creation. So the master distiller blended from just a few barrels to give that really premium taste. I'm enjoying that though. I'll be drinking more of that too a little bit later. In very cool pop culture though, my first release I want to talk about for this Vinyl Happy Hour is the Rick and Morty soundtrack. I really want to open this up like it's a toy or something. They have like a die-cut jacket that comes apart and it shows the front and the back of Rick and Morty. This is also a double LP on colored vinyl from Sub Pop. There are artists like Mazzy Star, Chaos, Blonde Redhead, Chad Van Galen also. Some really interesting music and some of the music and themes from the show. So that's a really fun, cool release. Really stoked about that coming out. Every Friday new releases come out. So we add used records and get all sorts of new releases from new artists here at Culture Shock. My next one is a really cool concept. This is Dave Grohl's new, it's not really an album, but it is a 23-minute composition. So it takes up one whole side of the record. And he plays all the instruments. He plays 7 instruments. There's 7 different tracks of all him playing. They even filmed like kind of like documentary style about it. How they recorded and filmed him playing all the instruments to link it together. And the jacket, they did a really cool job. It's a die-cut jacket, so it opens up very cool. And it shows kind of his instrument layout in the studio and even all the tracks and stuff he was using when he made the recording. On the B-side, it shows more of all the instruments. It's an etching since the song only fills up one whole side of the record. The B-side shows all the different instruments and tracks that he was using. So that's a really cool concept. Dave Grohl, again, he's come a long way, changed a lot between Nirvana and the Foo Fighters, and just doing such cool stuff in the music community. I love the documentary that they did with Foo Fighters for Sonic Highways. If you haven't seen that yet, or haven't seen this video yet, it's worth definitely watching on YouTube or something, and then listening to the record. It's got a lot of ups and downs. It's a pretty heavy song, though, really. So definitely check that one out. My next release is a new one from a great old power pop superstar, Paul Collins, from the Paul Collins Beat. This guy's been on the road and playing for probably 40 years. This is his new album on Alive Records. It's just a great power pop album. Really easy to listen to. He's got a great voice, some great jangly guitar, and even at times a little bit of a country-ish feel, you know, with kind of this higher voice. But he's such a cool guy. We actually got to see him and I guess kind of do a gig with him a few years ago. He was on tour through the Midwest. He was doing a big tour, and what was so cool is at his shows, he had the venue set up with local record stores to be vending at the show before the band played and while the bands were playing. And as a record vendor, we were treated like part of the show almost. So that was so cool of him, and I'll never forget that. And he was a lot of fun, another great musician. Next up, I have a band that everyone thinks they're familiar with, but I don't know if you've ever heard a band or listened to a band and heard a song and you're like, I have no idea who that is, and then you find out it's a band you really know or really like. There's been some bands that have gone through changes over the years. Fleetwood Mac, everyone usually associates the pop act, you know, with all the Landslide and Rhiannon and all those pop songs. But some people kind of don't know or have overlooked the early years of Fleetwood Mac. They started out in the 60s as a blues rock band. They were a British blues rock band, and then they evolved and did a little more, some pop stuff and things like that. But I want to talk about the original Fleetwood Mac. This is the original lineup with Peter Green, Jeremy Spencer, John McVie, and Mick Fleetwood. And they were a straight up blues rock band, lots of blues covers, very, very heavy bluesy. Just a good rock band. Nothing like the band you would think you know. So I just think it's really interesting to go back and find some of their older releases and find them. You know, this was called the original Fleetwood Mac, even though this actually came out in '71. This was songs they were recorded in the 60s. This is long before they met Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks. Oh, I was going to bring up that album too, but I didn't. But Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks did an album together, and they were actually going to be recording their next album. And somehow ended up in the studio and got to meet Fleetwood Mac, and they ended up joining the band, and that's history there. You know, their sound was forever changed to be totally polished radio pop superstars. So I don't know, it's just interesting. I don't know if you can name another band that you know that's gone through a severe change or just a totally different sound, but Fleetwood Mac is one of them. And my final release for tonight is also from a band that went through a really big change in sound. But what I really dig is their really obscure early stuff. The band is Manfred Mann, Chapter 3. This was kind of a reincarnation of his band. A lot of people know Manfred Mann. We'll just start out, if you don't know him, you probably know his 60s hits. I'm not going to sing it, but Do-Wah-Diddy, Diddy-Dum Diddy-Do. A lot of people know that, and that's where he started. And then he ended up doing more radio-friendly hits. Everyone knows Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and I'm sure you know the radio hit Blinded by the Light. I won't sing that either. But he had a really strange phase where he actually made a group called Manfred Mann Chapter 3. And it's pretty far out. It's very psychedelic. There's lots of horns and lots of organs. He's not even doing vocals on it, actually. It's Mike Hugg, his bandmate. Manfred Mann's actually just playing organ on it. But it's a crazy trip of a psychedelic album. Of course, they formed in '69, which was like the peak year, I guess, for everyone to do some very experimental stuff. But why this album, I'm going to call this my holy grail or my pick for the week, is this has been out of print since like 1970. It came out on the Vertigo record label. Once I heard this album, which was their first release, I was really in love with it. It's like they were doing some of the stuff that kind of far out John Coltrane and Miles Davis were doing, but even add a little Frank Zappa and some stuff to it. And then through the internet or reading up about it, I found out that there was a second album that came out, but it never got released in the States. And it seems to sell for $100 to $150 usually, plus overseas shipping. I've never found one for sale in the US. Well, it's finally getting reissued. Tomorrow, our Friday new release, is Manfred Mann Chapter 3, and the album is called Volume 2. He was from South Africa, Manfred Mann was, and I think his first band was just playing keyboards in a jazz band. And then he did the more 60s R&B soul pop. And then he went with this direction of the Chapter 3 band. Very psychedelic, very far out. I'm just so happy that it's getting reissued. It's kind of an obscure release. They did a great job with the reissue. We were just spinning it. It's all artist approved too, that all the artwork and the sounds on here, because that is a problem, I think, with a lot of obscure titles. They do get released or artists don't have control over that. So it does have a really nice inner sleeve too. And they did a really nice thick vinyl pressing of it, so it's at least 180 gram weight probably. But I just thought that was so cool, a band that I didn't think I'd be able to find a reissue comfortably. It's getting reissued and available right at my very own store. So we do have more copies of that available. I definitely urge you to check it out if you want to hear something totally different from a band that you thought you knew. It's definitely worth checking out. And again, we're doing our vinyl happy hour every Thursday night. So if you can tune in, check it out. We're doing them live on Facebook and Instagram. And if you've missed any previous ones, you can go back and check them out on our YouTube channel. You can find Culture Shock Clothing and Records on YouTube and find Vinyl Happy Hour. Like I said, we are doing this every week, and we're always looking for suggestions, and let us know what you think about the show. We appreciate your likes and any comments on what we're talking about. And we'll have a different drink next week. We're actually going to be... We've got a lot going on. We're going to be at Lucha Cantina next week. Are we going to do a show there maybe? I don't know. We might do it here. We might do it live from Lucha Cantina. We're actually doing a vinyl night there. We're going to be DJing there. And then next Saturday at Pig Mines. So there's a lot going on. And we're getting ready for the Rockford Record Crawl. And this weekend, or this week I should say, coming up, I'm going to be going to the Making Vinyl conference in Detroit, and it's going to be really cool. I'll be sure to share some stories with you about our Motown record tour and Third Man Records, of course. That's another great new release that just came out today. Father John Misty, live at Third Man Records. There's just so many great things coming out right now. Yeah, and so many great custom distilled bourbons and whiskeys too. So have a drink with us next week for our Vinyl Happy Hour. Thanks so much, guys. Cheers.